All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Yeah, it's a high wire act every day, isn't it? Right here. Yeah, I know. Mark Thompson Show. I'm Mark. That's Kim. We are excited to be with you for what will be a terrific Wednesday. I will tell you that coming up on the show, the rabbi of this show, the man who's sort of got his rich background when it comes to politics and history. He speaks like the greatest Shakespearean actor. He is the great John Rothmann. Yes, and he will be joining us bottom of the hour. We like to, you can't get right out of the chute with John. I want to warm you up, keep you around. So I'll tease the fact that he's going to be on. Then at 11 o'clock, we'll talk a little more in the way of politics, but also the voice of WAZE, the new voice of WAZE. He's a British guy named Anthony Davis. He has a very popular YouTube show in which he talks about stuff going on in the world. We'll get into stuff going on in the world with him. So thank you for being here. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
And welcome. Yeah, this is one of those days where we don't have to worry about rain, right, Kim? We're done with rain for the moment. Am I right?
Kim, how are you?
I don't think you're right. No.
You don't think I'm right?
I don't think you're right.
No. Isn't there just like a scattered shower or something? Or is there
I'm reading the headline on SF Gate says one more storm to bring rain to the Bay Area Wednesday.
Well, today is Wednesday.
So I'm thinking you're wrong.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm wrong.
Kim, how are you?
Yeah,
this is a weak system with minimal rainfall.
I feel like that could be a description of me. A weak system with minimal rainfall. What do you think? Yeah.
So I think we're going to get a smattering between 5 and 8 p.m. according to SF Gate. Yeah.
Well, to all who have joined live, we're here from 10 to noon every day live. It is our pleasure to bring you the show. We do a lot of things that we used to do on the radio station. We try to bring you a lot of the subjects that we used to do on the radio station. A lot of the people who used to join us on the radio station. So, and today, as an example, John Rothmann is going to be joining us. But we also are expanding the show and evolving it in other ways. I will tell you that I'm going to touch on the Niners game in a second. But first, I want to touch on what's going on in the city. You saw that with all the flooding that went down. This is in San Francisco. Then I'm going to get to Santa Cruz County, which is a mess. And the state has a huge bill that could hit $1 billion easily to rebuild after these storms. And I mentioned to you, I believe it was yesterday, that the damage done from these flooding rains and associated mudslides and damage to transportation infrastructure, et cetera, may be so substantial that when you put it up against the wildfires, it actually exceeds the wildfires that have plagued us for the last few years in terms of damage to the state.
When you were talking about damage, I thought about this picture that I saw. Is that wild? That is a picture of Graham Hill Road in the Santa Cruz Mountains.
I mean, that's a perfect example of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, the pier in Santa Cruz split in half, right?
Yeah.
The estimated cost likely to change as teams of local, state, and federal officials assess damage. This is all what they're saying now, the latest. Biden approving the expedited major disaster declaration, of course. So you'll get federal aid. But that still, is a tremendous amount of money and a tremendous amount of work ahead, right?
Yeah.
All 58 counties are able to access hazard mitigation assistance. So federal aid can be given to state and local governments and specific nonprofits. This is to reduce risk to life and property, typically is what that's targeted for federal assistance like that. And they'll reimburse local and state governments for 75% of the cost to repair infrastructure and other necessities, is the way the public coffers and federal coffers work out in terms of their interaction with California and the needs to rebuild. The significant damage, I mean, Merced, Sacramento, Santa Cruz counties, Monterey County, Santa Barbara, Ventura, San Benito, along the Central Coast. I mean, this is why you're going to have such tremendous need for money and for work. You had the story yesterday, and I think since then there have been additional slides that have affected transport, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Altamont Commuter Express train affected by a slide for the second day in a row.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that's going on. Meanwhile, in the city of San Francisco, there's this big garage, the Alioto garage, right?
Yeah.
And it was flooded, okay? A lot of garages in the city filled with water, and this was one of them.
Mm-hmm.
And we mention it because it is not only noteworthy, and of course, as you can see there, it ruined, you can imagine, with water at that level, a lot of cars. So we mention it because there is now going to be a lawsuit.
Look at that Tesla.
Wow.
Pew! Yep.
Yeah. Tesla's Porsches ruined at Alioto's San Francisco garage during brutal storms, the story says. Historic rainfall causing a lot of damage, death, and destruction around the state. The rising waters also ruined a bunch of high-end cars awaiting repairs. This is a garage that is to repair these things.
Yeah, I think they're going to be working overtime.
Yeah, now you really need to repair them.
Mm-hmm.
40 Teslas, Porsches, and a few other vintage cars. Chris Alioto is the guy whose garage it is. His wife also lost her Mercedes.
Oh, no.
Yeah. It's been a horrible situation, Alioto said. The cars, their electrical components suffered irreparable harm.
Yep.
Irreparable would be a ding word.
I was wondering if it's irreparable, you can't fix it. So I was wondering, looking at that Tesla, I mean, when a battery is fried and gets water in it, that's it. It's done.
That's right.
So I wonder, if you can even fix that car. He says it's irreparable, so I guess maybe you junk it and go for a new Tesla.
Yeah, I mean, that might be, well, I was going to say it might be tricky. It might not be. The insurance company will handle that, right? They'll total the car and you'll get a new car, maybe.
Yeah.
For the last 15 or 20 years, Alioto said that city crews have cleaned out the storm drains in his neighborhood every fall with massive vacuums. A practice, he said, stopped 3 years ago. What happened 3 years ago? Anybody?
COVID.
Exactly. The pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So now, and this is the lawsuit part.
Was that a rhetorical question?
Yeah, rhetorical-ish. And that was fine. It was oh, you wanted the ding. I'm sorry.
Yeah, thank you.
But what I was just getting to is that's where the lawsuit comes in, right?
Yeah.
He's saying, hey, San Francisco Public Utilities, you have a responsibility to keep these storm drains clean. And that responsibility now you're really going to realize, because this is where the shoe pinches, you didn't. And we had a backup. Now I've lost all of this, Porsches, Teslas, Mercedes, whatever. Mm-hmm. And you, the city of San Francisco, you're going to pay for it.
It's interesting because you saw the adoption by residents in San Francisco of certain storm drains. If you live at whatever, Polk and Van Ness, there you go. They don't cross, but you go and, find a storm drain, adopt it, and keep it clear for the storms. Basically doing what the city is supposed to be doing. So residents around the city of San Francisco are trying to clear storm drains when that responsibility really falls on the city of San Francisco, and maybe residents are having to step up as another sign showing that the city is not doing what it's supposed to be.
That's such a great point. We shouldn't need to do this. It's a fun thing and a fun project, the same way you adopt a highway or whatever it might be, But the reality is, these are responsibilities of the city of San Francisco and other municipalities to take care of this stuff. That's what your tax dollars go for, right?
And trust me, taxes in San Francisco are no joke. So
exactly. Now, how many storm drains are in the city of San Francisco? I ask you in the chat, how many storm drains are there in the city of San Francisco? It's a big city. It's a small city with big city stuff. It's a biggish small city. It's a smallish big city. My point is, think big. A lot. 2,500, says Calvin Wong, who is really almost an associate producer on this show. He sends me so much great content. 26,000, says Nick. 35,000, says Tom. 50,000, says Champagne Wishes. Well,
Ricky O'Bear, very specific.
Yes.
74,816.
Love that Ricky has the specific. I love it. Nick says 26,000, as we said. John says 1,000. John, that is cute. But I told you to think big. Joanne says 80. The answer is the city of San Francisco, the number of storm drains, 25,000. That's right. That's a lot of storm drains. And you have to deal with this increasingly as these huge storms roll through. So there's all of that going on in the city. I'll mention something else. The crooks. They don't take the week off just because it's raining. 17 cars broken into in a single night in a San Francisco neighborhood, and it's not a neighborhood you necessarily would associate. This is the thing about the city. These break-ins, these smash and grabs happen everywhere.
Yeah.
This is in Cow Hollow. I don't think Cow Hollow is a neighborhood where I normally would associate it with, it's not a dangerous neighborhood.
If you were going to where the nice cars are sitting.
Thank you.
Yeah,
That's
you
true.
went ahead to Cow Hollow, the Marina, Pacific Heights.
Go
Sure.
to where the money is.
That's right.
That's right. That's right.
I mean, why would you break
It's
into
a
some
wild
car?
idea, but
Whatever.
it just might work.
Exactly. Well,
You
they
know?
did. They went there, and they hit 17 different cars. The break-ins were discovered by residents of 2 residential blocks of Filbert Street between Pierce and Fillmore. In all cases, the passenger side window was broken in to gain entry. Either the glove box or center console was left open. The incident was posted to Nextdoor. Nextdoor has become this, I mean, man, you read Nextdoor and life is, it goes from, I've been the victim of one of 17 smash and grabs in my neighborhood to, we found a gecko in our backyard. I mean, Nextdoor is one of those things where you just don't know what you're going to get, right?
It's a lot of drama on the Nextdoor.
It is that too. And sometimes it gets political, which can be kind of a bummer. But
I once had my car broken into in the city. I was working an overnight shift on a radio station. I might have been on KGO at the time. But I had parked outside, and I come back to my car, and the door's hanging open. Thank goodness, because I had a convertible, so I didn't lock it because they
look
would
at
just
you
split
with
the
the
roof.
convertible.
Well,
yeah. I
no,
love it.
Girl, you just
Now I have a mom car.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, yeah.
So I look inside, and because I had a convertible, I left nothing of value ever in the car. So nothing was taken, but all the things that like the napkins and whatever in the center console were on the seat. And on the floor of the driver's side were pills. So I lean down, I pick up a pill. And what is this? It says Prozac on the side. I thought, oh, somebody with with depression broke into my car
Oh, wow.
and left me some pills.
Or they thought, you're going to need these after I just broke into your car.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you didn't take anything, but you left a parting treat. Thank you.
Yeah. The thieves read Nextdoor, says Ricky. What was that noise is my favorite. Huge in Japan. It's on Nextdoor when somebody says, I just heard I just heard this.
Oh, yeah.
I just heard gunshots. You'll say that's fireworks.
Yeah.
I was doing the math. Lori
going?
says, yeah, right. Where's that siren?
Yeah.
So that's one storm drain per 35 people. Is that right? You've done the math, Lori? That could be. My garage.
So I believe her.
Heather Kennedy says, my garage got broken into last year. The only thing they took was an old Roomba that had sucked up a cat turd. Nice. First reference to the
Meth
T
house
word on
is
this
fragrant.
show.
That's great.
Hope their meth house is fragrant. That's great.
That's awesome, Heather.
Too good. The question came up. Oh, Albert is not here today. Albert's got the week off. Tony is not here today. Debbie asked this question. Could not join in last week at all. Where is Albert? Albert, has another job, and this is like a side hustle for him. So he is kind of here when he can be. And Tony, same thing. He's got a bunch of stuff too. So I'm actually going to bring on even another person to help kind of give us some consistency in that area. But Albert and Tony, we love them. And so they'll clearly be a part of things too.
This
so
is no side hustle for me. This is my Mark Thompson career path that I'm on. I'm committed.
Yeah, well, it's
what?
Well, and it's a sad fact, but that's look. We picked this up. I feel personally challenged by it. It's far more difficult to do this show than it may seem, but I also embrace that challenge, and I'm not going to give up on it. So, life is throwing a lot of stuff at us right now, with funding challenges, but also with life challenges. But we're staying with it, so you don't need to worry. The cast will always be people that you know or that you'll get to know, but the essence of the show will always continue, and so you don't have to worry about that.
Sharon
I do
says,
have
at least you got the show up and running. A great job. Thank you, Sharon.
Yes, thank you, Sharon. Indeed, you're right. It's a lot harder than we thought too. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
If you want a Niners game ticket, the Cowboys and Niners play this weekend. You better get ready to shell it out, kid.
Oh, how much is it?
This is a great question. You want to go to the Niners game?
Mm-hmm.
How much is the cheapest ticket? You want to go to Levi's? And you want to join 68,499 of your friends. It's Sunday. You want to get in, but you want to get the cost to the cheapest.
No, do you want the cheapest?
Okay, I'll tell you what. You want me to change the question?
I mean, you're going to go.
No, I can't. Let me answer this question then. Let me answer that. Yeah. So there are about 6,700 tickets for sale on StubHub. Excuse me, StubHub. And there's still things out there. The get-in price of a single standing room only ticket. Everybody's pretty good. Everybody's pretty right on about this. It's $450.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. All right. Now, how much is the most expensive ticket? The most expensive ticket to the Niners game. It's at Levi's against the Cowboys on Sunday.
We're not talking like box seats or like your own little
We're
room.
talking about a field level seat in row 1.
Oh.
And I can only give you an estimate based on because they're changing all the time. They're on StubHub. They're fluctuating.
Sure. 3 guesses so far for $10,000 each. Got a 5,000. Greg says 7,800.
I'm going to go to StubHub right now while you...
Tom says 4,423.
I love how specific that is.
Jim says 15 grand.
All right, let me just see.
On Bitcoin, he said.
Yeah, there you go.
You can pay for your tickets in Bitcoin now, right? I don't know. That's weird. Janet, 47 grand. B. Solomon says 2,500. JB says 2,500. Linda, 50 grand.
Wow, 50 grand.
Yeah.
Wow.
That is row 1,
Row 1. You want 50-yard line. You want VIP.
Linda also says 50 grand, and Sandy says that would be worth every penny.
It'd be worth every penny? Sandy said that?
Yeah.
Sandy, you're my kind of girl. Oh, wait a minute. You're not my kind of girl. You like too many nice things. Well, it's not 50 grand. It's VIP up front, 50-yard line.
Yeah.
$4,600 is the answer. That will get you in there.
That's not so bad at all. John
Yeah, so
Watson wonders if COVID is included in that.
Well, it's outdoors, so you don't need to worry about getting COVID, particularly when you're outdoors. It's in the congregate settings. I mean, I used to go to the Giants game in the early days of COVID when they were letting fans go back in. And so you end up with, you're fine in the open air. I mean, I say fine. You know what I mean? You have a lesser chance of contracting something in the open air. But when you're going to get refreshments in the congregate settings of indoors, that's where things get a little bit tougher. But it's expensive, but it'll probably be worth it. I mean, Niners are on a tear, and it's really exciting to see them doing so well, having faced their own adversity, right? They lost 2 starting quarterbacks.
Yeah.
And they may have found a new starting quarterback. So
is it Karen who has the 49ers Christmas tree up in her man cave? I don't know. I wonder if the tree is still up. She says watching it on TV so I can make my own chili.
Look, I think football is particularly a sport that's great to watch on TV.
Yeah.
The sports to see in person, I would imagine, because I've never actually been to, but I'm going to say soccer, football, that kind of football, hockey is a terrific sport to see in person.
Oh, yeah.
Even if it's the Sharks, it's terrific. And, I also think tennis. Of course, I'm a tennis fan, so I believe tennis is a great sport to see in person. But football, it's so replay dependent. You almost need some way to see that replay. Now, to be fair, they have taken the whole Jumbotron technology and the whole video technology to another place. So when you're at Levi or when wherever you are, now you can see the replays. They show them to the crowd. I just still think I'm kind of with, who was it who said she's showing it? Karen. I'm kind of with Karen. Give me the home scene.
Yeah.
So, I wanted to do a mini That's Rich. I wonder if there is a chance to do it. I don't have the open though. Let me see if I can just find it here. Kim, while you read something, read a comment.
Here's something I wanted to tell you.
Yes.
This is a story I was going to do in news, but I'll tell you now. The Justice Department, because I wanted you to be able to talk to John Rothman about it.
Yes.
The Justice Department is revealing today that it considered an FBI search of President Biden's home for classified documents.
Wow.
That's interesting, I think. There's a report in the Wall Street Journal that says the DOJ wanted to have that option open in case Biden's lawyers didn't cooperate with the investigation. It looks like they did. In the aftermath of that, the White House has been very tight-lipped on this whole investigation and whole probe. So that's just some little extra.
Yeah. No, I'm glad you mentioned it. We're going to talk to John Rothman, bottom of the hour after Kim's news, just in a few minutes, and we'll ask him about that.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who are they?
The top 0.1%.
What are they like?
These people are so posh and snobby, they're snotty.
That's Rich on the Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Smash it like a boss for the
iron rod.
For the news about the money. As you know, the world elite, they're gathering in Davos, Switzerland. We told you yesterday how there's a real rush on prostitutes there. Prostitution legal. They chose a place where prostitution is legal. I mean, coincidence? You tell me. But that's not what this is about. This is about money lost by Usain Bolt. You know Usain Bolt, the at one time fastest man in the world. Exactly. Yeah. He lost $10 million in retirement funds. How? He was scammed out of it. That's right. He was scammed from personal stocks and securities in his retirement fund. This just happened. Only $2,000 out of $10 million remains in his possession.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So you talk about, he's got a Puma ambassadorship. He's got a bunch of different endorsements. He has $10 million. And again, he fed it all into a retirement account that has been drained by scammers. I told you my mother was hit by scammers, and they're very clever, You have to really be careful, and they prey on the elderly. Elderly sometimes can be lonely. Elderly sometimes like to talk to people, and so people call and they feel bonded, and they're very clever. They're really good, these scammers.
Or they, don't realize, older folks don't realize that, Apple is not going to call you and ask for access to your computer. So, and they know. And then once someone, I think, answers the phone or gives a little bit of information, then they're on the target list.
A New York oil baron who lost billions in the collapse of Enron also invested tens of millions in Bernie Madoff's Ponzi scheme.
Oh, no.
This guy is twice bitten, right?
Mm-hmm.
He just took a hit in the implosion of, if you guessed FTX, Robert Belfer, 87. His family's made several philanthropic donations to institutions like the Metropolitan Museum of Art, Harvard University, Yeshiva University. He was listed in court documents as a shareholder of FTX. Belfer Investment Partners and Lime Partners, two firms linked to the family business, held a bunch of stock in FTX. They're wiped out of almost $50 million. So between Bernie Madoff, Enron, and FTX, they're making bad decisions. And finally, in That's Rich, I leave you with this. This just happened. Brad Pitt, hunky Brad Pitt, quietly puts his compound in Hollywood. It's in Los Feliz, which is a nice area of Los Angeles, near Hollywood. He puts it on the market amid the contentious divorce he's having with Angelina Jolie. The home was purchased in 1994 for $1.7 million. He's listing the compound now as he wants something smaller now in L.A. He's lived at the home with his ex-wife, Angelina Jolie, and their 6 children before the separation. Bought it for $1.7 million. He's now listed it for how much?
Well, now it has Brad Pitt's name attached to it.
He's 59 years old. It's a compound, I'll remind you. All right.
How many houses on the compound?
He purchased the home from Cassandra Peterson, who was Elvira.
Oh.
In 1994, he reportedly paid $1.7 million for it. Let me see if I can find a little bit more about it.
If it was 1.7, I'm gonna say like 5.3.
That seems like a reasonable choice.
That sounds reasonable to you?
Yeah. I don't know what's. Do you see? You could throw up a couple of guesses from the chat if you would, please, and then we'll
Ron
wrap
says
this up.
14 mil. Lulu 18. Lori 20.
No?
Going big. Jeff is at 14.9. Jay Siller is at $40 million.
Wow.
I don't know. I think that's.
I'm going to stop the guessing because Jay Siller is right. It's $40 million. Wow.
Are you kidding me?
I know.
1.7 to 40 million?
Yeah.
What?
I'm sorry. That's the truth. I don't make this stuff up. You want Brad Pitt's compound? It's going to cost you $40 million.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's wild. You just bought a castle in Carmel, too.
Yeah. Well, there's that.
More on how the other half lives
These people aren't just rich, they're crazy rich.
next time on The Mark Thompson Show.
Now, Kim, we have a fork in the road. The fork is we have your news, but I also have a superstar in the wings.
I don't think that we can keep the superstar waiting.
Now, I kind of agree, and I'm glad to hear you say that because I
Yeah.
didn't want to have to make that decision
It's okay.
independently.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, this guy is so cool to come in and regularly spend time with us.
Yeah.
To slum it here. He is a fan favorite.
The Mark Thompson Show.
How about it for John Rothman, everybody? What's up, John Rothman? Nice to have you in the mix.
May I say my pleasure? First of all, I want you to know I think that compound would be perfect for the Mark Thompson program.
I think so too.
What's 40 million between friends? I mean, really,
Yeah.
when you boil it all down. As for Superstar, I would yield on that to Kim McAllister, who is always the best.
Well, you are so
Please.
gracious always, John. That's why we like you. You're a slickster with your cool tongue and your magical way about you, and the way
And
you speak.
Don't forget my hairdo.
Oh my God, we love it. You're a sexy fool, and you know it. All right, now I want to get to what's going on in the world, John. I wasn't going to start with this, but I'm going to because Kim mentioned it. The document revelations, where these documents, classified documents, keep showing up in Biden world. They show up in different places. Some of the places more embarrassing than others, like the garage situation. Frame this for us, and Kim had the story. Just remind, I don't know if John was hearing it, or I don't know if you're aware of it, John, that the Justice Department was actually considering, isn't this right? Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah,
Remind me.
it's the Justice Department revealing now that it considered an FBI search of President Biden's home for classified documents. A report in the Wall Street Journal saying the DOJ wanted to have that option in case Biden's lawyers didn't cooperate with the investigation. It looks like they did. In the aftermath of that, the White House has been very tight-lipped on the investigation. So they were talking about it, but when they realized the FBI was like, should we go take a little look-see, they clammed up.
Thoughts,
Look,
John?
Yeah, it's very simple. It's a disaster for Joe Biden. He should have known better. The argument is being made that he didn't know because he didn't do the packing. That's no excuse. Your aides should be briefing you fully on everything. Does it equate with what Donald Trump did? The answer is no. What Donald Trump did was qualitatively and quantitatively much worse. But don't confuse people with that. The president of the United States, I think, is in deep doo-doo, if I can be so bold as to say it. And how that affects his political future is another issue. The other thing he has to worry about, of course, is the committee assignments that have been given to some of the most reactionary, right-wing, I don't even want to call them Republican, they're not really Republicans, who are now going to be investigating him. And Hunter Biden and his two brothers are also now being investigated. So when you boil it all down for Joe Biden, this is a not a good situation.
No.
And equate that to 2024. And I think it's a major obstacle. And it means that within the Democratic Party, there are a lot of people now talking about what do we do if Joe Biden doesn't run?
Well, this is interesting because it leads us eventually to Diane Feinstein, who I will get to in a moment. But I wonder if you can calibrate then the political damage. It sounds to me, I mean, there's going to be something of a show trial or a show investigation along the lines of what you're talking about from the jihadists who are now occupying the committee assignments in the House, even though they were removed from committee assignments for racist and incendiary remarks they made before. But now that the GOP is in charge of the House again, they're getting those assignments back. But when you talk about the political damage done to Joe Biden, is there any viable alternative the Democrats might have to Joe Biden as a top-of-ticket candidate?
Well, let's step back for a moment and point out that Marjorie Taylor Greene and Paul Gosar are serving on the House Oversight Committee, not to mention having major committee assignments. It is absolutely, to me, incomprehensible. As a former Republican, as someone who is viewed as a historian of the Republican Party, it is absolutely unthinkable that well, no, it isn't, because Kevin McCarthy wanted to be Speaker, and like the novel, The Devil and Daniel Webster, he was willing to sell his soul in order to become Speaker of the House. I think for the Republicans, it's a very bad look. And unfortunately,
and by the way, when you say, I don't mean to interrupt, but when you say sell his soul, just to be pure about it, I mean, just to be specific about it, these are the trades that he made to get their support. In other words, he's putting them back on these committees, is your point, because he made those deals with the devil.
He had to in order to become Speaker.
Right.
And I think in the history of the House of Representatives, and if we talked about the speakership, and last week when you were not here, I cited several books on the speakership. There's never been anything like it. It's just horrific. Do the Democrats have an alternative to Joe Biden? The answer is, of course, they do. They have Kamala Harris. They have Gavin Newsom. They have a host of aspirants who would like to run as the Democratic nominee. Nobody can make a move until Joe Biden makes his decision. Now, I don't know what Joe Biden's going to do. I really don't. But I can tell you, even when he announces what he's going to do, because of his age and the apparent state of his health, I don't know that it's terrible. I don't know what the circumstances are, but you can see a slowing down. Everyone is going to speculate, what do we do if? And the main person on all that is Kamala Harris. And everybody should understand, vice presidents of the United States either become president and remain president or getting renomination. The only time that did not happen was Chester Alan Arthur in 1884, who wanted to remain president and who was denied the nomination. And I would suggest to you that in this case, Kamala Harris will have a real claim, and the Biden people are, I think, going to get behind her.
Well, I'd love to talk more about that another time, John. I think Kamala Harris's national appeal is limited. They've kept her sort of under wraps. They gave her, to be fair to Kamala Harris, they gave her the crap assignments. Go solve the immigration problem at the border or whatever. And it was, these intractable issues. But that said, I don't, look at how she did in the
Just remember, when you're talking about primaries, it's fine with me. But remember, that is ancient history. That's so long ago, it doesn't matter. But I want you to think about the fact that Gerald Ford nobody really knew him when he became president. Harry Truman, you know what the slogan for Truman was by the Republicans? To err is Truman. He had no national depth except having led the Truman Committee. So I'm gonna suggest to you that once a person becomes president, the whole nature of how they're analyzed becomes different. And there tends to be at the beginning a tremendous amount of sympathy. That is to say, we want you to succeed. So we'll see how that flows. Had Jerry Ford not pardoned Richard Nixon, and had Jerry Ford not made that slip up about the Soviet Union not controlling Eastern Europe, he would have been the winner in 1976.
We'll talk about, there's Amy Klobuchar, it's pointed out in the chat. There are others besides Kamala Harris.
Yes, absolutely. And Amy Klobuchar, by the way, was my choice for vice president.
Yeah, I think that she'd be, in a mainstream institutional way, which is, I think, the country that we're looking at, she would be a good choice. Stand by, John. I want to, when we come back, talk about the future of Diane Feinstein and where she is as a candidate. We're talking to John Rothmann, and he is he's a great authority on so many things. But right now, I want to talk to this guy. Come on.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Put it together for Steve Moskowitz, everybody. Come on. What's up, Steve?
Well, Mark, I'm helping people that can't pay their taxes. And that's such a common problem. People just can't pay them. And the first thing you want to do is not panic. You have a lot of company. And there's so much we can do for people, like an offer in compromise. That's where you offer to pay the government part and they forgive you the rest. The taxes just go away. They're just forgiven. Or we ask for a hardship deferral where they leave you alone until you're back on your feet. You get your new job, turn your business around, sickness is over, whatever. Or pay in monthly installments, or ask for a penalty abatement. The penalties can really mount up, and sometimes the penalties and interest can be more than the tax. We can ask the government to forgive those. And the bottom line is there's so much we can do, but don't stick your head in the sand because the IRS is getting heavy-handed. And they really need the money. Just look at all the government spending. They really need the money. They have a lot of new agents, and in their process of hiring these new 87,000 agents, they'd have to do something. And President Biden said for every dollar he invests in the IRS, he wants multiple dollars back, which makes sense. So don't have the government go to your employer and maybe ruin your career. Or if you're in business, go to your customers, because if they do, a lot of customers will abandon you when the IRS comes calling. Turn it over to us. In almost all cases, we can do everything for you. You don't have to talk to the government, deal with them, have anything to do with them. We do the whole job.
And, next hour, when we continue this conversation, Steve Moskowitz, I'd like to ask you about some of the actual X's and O's of that conversation you had with the government, meaning what you can negotiate on. I mean, I love that notion that you can get people out from under this insane bill that's presented to them.
There's a lot of room for negotiation.
Yeah, I really want to talk about that when we come back. So we'll do that next hour. But for now, I want you to know Steve is your friend. Steve is your ally. Steve is your advocate. And people at Steve's agency can help you, regardless of where you are in the country watching this. Call Moskowitz, 888-TAX-DEAL, 888-TAXDEAL, 888-TAX-DEAL. You can also reach Steve online, of course. Moskowitz, LLP.com. Moskowitz, LLP.com. Steve Moskowitz. We'll talk next hour, Steve.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Steve Moskowitz. Good stuff. All right, back to the
Mark Thompson Show.
I want to welcome back in John Rothmann. Hey, John, I want to ask you about Diane Feinstein now. Diane Feinstein is past her expiration date in terms of public service. Do we agree on that?
Yes. And I say that with regret because I've known Diane Feinstein since before she was a supervisor. I knew her late husband, Bert. I knew her father. I've known Dr. Goldman. I've known everybody. So it's a very tough thing.
Right. You say that reluctantly, but but look, that takes nothing away from her service. It just is time to step aside. And before I get to who might succeed her, I want to ask you another question that came up to me last night. It was about RBG and whether she should have stepped down. What would have happened? Can we just quickly skip to that question? The old idea that as someone advances in years and as that is a critical position that they have, in this case, a Supreme Court seat, let's go to the RBG situation because I never heard you weigh in on that. What was the right move there in the 3D chess of the politics of the Supreme Court?
Nobody ever concedes their own mortality. I don't know anybody who is prepared to die. I mean, they know they're going to, but people don't admit it. And RPG really thought that she could survive everything, including cancer. Did she make the right decision? In retrospect, no. But if she had lived, then it would have been the right decision. So how do you know? I mean, really.
Okay, so you don't have an issue with the way she handled it. Now let's get back to Feinstein. Katie Porter has thrown her name in. Schiff has thrown his name in. And Barbara Lee has thrown her name in right over in the East Bay. How do you see this coming together? And then, again, I remind you, Feinstein hasn't announced that she's stepping down.
Look, this is the logical thing to do. People should be declaring their candidacy. The people should have the opportunity to choose. I know that Katie Porter was at Rossmore in the East Bay, which is one of the most powerful Democratic clubs in the East Bay. And so that contest is now on. The question is, will Diane live out her term? And if she does, God bless her. And if she doesn't, then Gavin Newsom, as the governor of California, appoints a nominee, a candidate for the Senate. And how he will make that choice is interesting. He has pledged a black woman would take that seat if he were to nominate or appoint somebody. And appoint is the right word. There would have to be a vacancy. And that narrows it. Barbara Lee would have been the person. I know Val Demings was in the run, but she's now mayor of Los Angeles. So these are all speculations. What's interesting for me is that this is the first time that we will really have an open seat for the United States Senate in many, many years. So that's what's going to make it interesting.
And the power of incumbency is big, right, John? So the appointment of someone. Yeah,
still
that's what I'm saying.
Diane.
Yeah.
She has a very capable staff. They're exercising all the prerogatives. I would point out to you that Diane could have been the president pro tem of the Senate, which would have put her in line for the presidency of the United States after the vice president. And she chose not to accept that position. That's an indication of her recognition of her own mortality. But what would Gavin Newsom do? it seems clear to me that he has locked himself in. He says a black woman, and if I were Barbara Lee, I'd be very enthusiastically cheering for that possibility.
Sure.
Why, if she knows she's, I'm sorry, Mark, if she knows she's not, she's kind of on the downward trend, why, and is not accepting this position, then why not come out and say, I'm not going to run again? Why make people have to go around her and declare
she'll
candidacy?
Do it in her own good time. There's no reason to be pushed to make a statement. Who knows? She could have a miraculous recovery. No, but very seriously, she is pacing herself. She understands she's the incumbent. She understands the prerogatives that she has. And no matter how much of a decline she suffered, and I don't know, I have not seen her, nor have I spoken to her, nor has she done any media interviews. Nothing. Zip. Zero. But she is still the United States Senator, senior United States Senator from California, with all of the prerogatives that she may choose to exercise. And, why do something precipitous? She'll take time to do it. I think she'll do it. I think it'll be in the next few months because there's an inevitability here.
Precipitous is a dang word. You're right. Of course you haven't heard from her, John. You know why you haven't heard from her. You know why she's not speaking publicly, because it's a bad look these days. I kind of share your view of her distinguished history of public service, although I think it's been punctuated by some mistakes along the way. But, when you serve that long, you're going to make some mistakes. But I think, the great, even the politically graceful thing, especially since, as you say, Newsom can appoint whoever he wants.
When
the
she's
move is
dead,
to step down.
when she's dead, or when she resigns.
When she resigns, exactly.
Until then, she is the United States Senator from California.
Yeah,
and that's the way she views it. And having known Diane all these years, it doesn't surprise me.
Now I will ask you something that's coming up repeatedly. Here's Sharon Kidd asking this question. Is there an age limit to be in Congress?
No.
I think, yeah. And the answer to that is no. The other thing that's coming up is...
Nor are there term limits.
That was the second question. Should there be term limits? John Rothmann, I ask you.
No, I've never favored term limits. I've always opposed term limits. I believe we've had people who have served well beyond years you would have thought, who have been very able members of the United States Senate. And the House of Representatives. I don't think you can impose an age limit any more than I think, Mark, you can impose an age limit on a media personality.
How dare you even bring us into this conversation? But I
look at your parents, by the way. Look at your parents.
Thank you. Yeah, 92 years old. That's right. No, and still can be productive well into later years, but. You do. It's not a question of productivity, okay, John? It's not even a question of age per se. Things happen, you know this, with multiple terms. Deals are made. It's the political aspects, the aspects of government, of legislating that change when somebody doesn't need to worry because they have all the fundraising, wiring up, backroom deals made that can keep them in office forever. I mean, that can't be a good deal, is it, John?
Diane has a great staff. They are performing their functions. Everything you would want, including constituent services, are being performed by Diane Feinstein's staff. I can tell you, having worked as the chief of staff to a member of the California State Senate, who was not in the best of health at the end of his tenure, we kept everything going. Nobody really understood. And frankly, his limitations were concealed as we helped him to do his job. Is that a bad thing or a good thing? Well, he was term limited. He couldn't run again, and he wanted to finish his term, and he did, and he lived another couple of years. So all I can say to you is Diane Feinstein's people make these judgments with her. One thing I do know, and you alluded to it, Diane, what worries me is she doesn't return phone calls personally. It's not a question of seeing her. There's no interaction with Diane Feinstein. And that, to me, is profoundly concerning, simply because if her mind were completely clear, there would be no hesitation to pick up a phone and call. That worries me.
Thank you. That's exactly the point I'm making. That's what I was saying. When you of course you haven't seen her publicly, and of course you haven't. I mean, look, John, to state it bluntly and perhaps a bit crudely, this isn't Weekend at Bernie's where you prop somebody up and everybody, the staff and everybody else handles it. Meanwhile, the actual senator is essentially just a prop. I feel as though, and you've agreed with me, and reluctantly, that her time has come to step down. Now, you said just to not run again. I didn't push you on that. I mean, would you have her?
You want to know about resignation?
Yes, that's what I'm asking you. Should she resign?
That's an individual decision. I think it would be very. I'm not trying to.
No, I'm trying to. Of course, it's an individual decision, John. You tell me what you think you'd advise her to do. It's you and her speaking right now.
If I were advising Diane, and I can't do it because I haven't sat down with her, I haven't talked to her, but clearly the end is in sight. And if she were to resign, then that gives Gavin Newsom the opportunity to make that choice. If she stays in office, Democratic primary voters, and actually the voters of California, because there's no longer a primary, would have the opportunity to make that replacement. I think that is a better option, and I would argue that the people making the choice rather than Governor Newsom makes more sense to me.
Well, we love talking to you.
That may not be the answer you wanted, but you're asking me, and I'd be interested in what our listeners think, our viewers think. Do you agree with me? Isn't it better for the voters of California in the primary to make a choice rather than having Governor Newsom make a nomination? Just my view.
Governor Newsom did it last time, right? When he had to fill Boxer's seat.
No, Kamala Harris.
Kamala Harris's seat. So, I mean, and voters liked that nomination because, that appointment because they kept him. So, what does that say about whether Gavin Newsom has his finger on the pulse of what voters want?
Whether he does or he doesn't, would you rather have somebody make a choice for you, or would you rather make the choice yourself?
I'd rather make the choice myself.
Of course. I want to see an active primary. I want to see a variety of competitors. And when Diane leaves, let all the tributes be paid to her. But understand, and I say this advisedly, if something happens to Diane, the choice will be Gavin Newsom's. And can anybody tell me, there is an answer to this question, who the last United States senator nominated by a governor to be defeated was? Anybody know? 1992, John Seymour, who nobody remembers and who served a very short time in the Senate. The voters threw him out, and that was the year that Feinstein and Boxer were elected. So remember, Feinstein is the one who defeated John Seymour, and Barbara Boxer defeated Bruce Hershenson. So I point this out. I would rather see the people decide than the governor.
I'd rather a lot of things. I mean, sadly, I think she's in a situation where we can even have this conversation reasonably about her future, and she will be primaried if she stays in. I don't know how that is going to be handled.
She's not going to stay in. She can't run on a primary and not do any public appearances.
That's what I mean. Exactly.
But again, I boil this down, and it'll be interesting in what listeners think. And this is really where listeners come in terms of interactive radio. Should the governor make an appointment and she should resign now, or would you rather vote in an election, which is coming up sooner than we think?
No, but it's not coming up soon enough for this seat that is being held by someone who is a vacant suit. I'm sorry. She's being handled by staff, and it's a disservice to this institution.
I understand what you're saying, and I wouldn't disagree with you, but I would rather have the people choose than the governor.
The people will have a chance to choose after he appoints Barbara Lee or whomever.
Once you're in, it's very hard to displace you. And I'm logical enough and clear enough to understand that. And that's why I use the example of John Seymour, who nobody remembers.
Right. But John Seymour passed away. I mean, didn't win. Isn't that right, John?
That's the whole point. He ran, exactly. And he was defeated by Diane Feinstein at the same time when Barbara defeated Bruce Hershenson.
But let me just, But he was installed, was he not? He lost after being installed into office. Am I right?
He was placed into office by the governor. Exactly.
That's what I'm saying. So you're saying, I was just saying, so have him appoint Barbara Lee, right? So Barbara Lee's now, and you said, well, the power of incumbency, though, it's so great. And once you've done that, well, you just given me examples of the power of incumbency not being so great.
You're right, very logically, and I want to go back.
Thank you very much. I'm right. You heard John Rothman say it, Tim.
Wait. I want to point this out to you. You also pointed out how people can take a gamble on money. You cited at the opening of your show a man who invested in every bad thing. I don't want to see. I would rather see the people choose. That's it. But yes, I give you that, Mark Thompson.
I love talking to you. It's a great luxury to have you on the show. Thank you, John Rothman. You'll find John Rothman here regularly because he's so generous with his time and his ideas and his perspectives. You're the best, my friend. Thank you so much. John Rothman, everybody. Yeah. Good stuff. Yeah. Well, in the end, huh, Kim? In the end, he relented. Yeah. It's tough, though. It's tough. The wrestling match with the Rothman is the toughest in the land.
It really is. Yeah.
All right. So when we come back, I want you to meet this Anthony Davis. He's a British journalist. He has also done some voiceover work. And as you know, I've done a lot of voiceover work, too, through the years. So he's the new voice of WAZE. You know, the thing that directs you to... Right?
Please turn
so I want to
right
ask him
on
about
Van
that.
Ness.
Yes. Turn right on Battery Street. Right. So we'll talk to him. Anthony Davis. He also has a YouTube show that's very, very hot. So we'll ask him about that. So he has some keen political perspectives. And of course, anybody who's raised over there, you know, in Great Britain, brings a different perspective as they begin to operate in this country, you know, and look at things in this country. So we'll talk to him about all of that stuff. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
If you are watching in replay, I first of all celebrate you if you're watching in replay. Smash it, the like button, thumbs up, and it helps us
iron rod.
in the algorithms of YouTube. So I also wonder if I could acknowledge something. You know, one of the and how do we do this, Kim? Can you help me with the with the various people who've supported us with super stickers and super chats? Yeah. We like to acknowledge you.
Yeah.
And
you want to do it now or after news?
Let's do it after news. But I did see sort of an important word from one of our great supporters, Andreas. So we will we'll get to that as we continue. Meantime, smash it and we continue. So thank you for being here. Mark Thompson Show.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Use Mark Thompson.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah,
Mark Thompson Show, that's right.
Big. You come in big with that big theme. I love it.
I come in big. I come in hot.
I love it.
I come in on the Mark Thompson Show.
No, don't play it again. I was just saying, oh my God. Please. All right. That's it.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Jim McAllister. This report, of course, sponsored by our founding sponsor and the lovely man, tax attorney Steve Moskowitz at 888 Tax Deal. President Volodymyr Zelensky says the world needs to act quickly to help defend Ukraine against Russia's invasion. He is in Switzerland at the World Economic Forum in Davos. That's kind of a unfortunately blurry picture of what it looks like there. He is addressing the World Economic Forum, saying Russia's tyranny is outpacing Ukraine's democracy. Zelensky is saying with every moment the world takes to respond, Russia is able to take more Ukrainian lives. Prosecutors are now saying this woman that has been missing for the last 3 weeks, her husband, they say, according to prosecutors, dismembered her body before putting it in a dumpster. In court today, they laid out the timeline of Anna Walsh's New Year's Day vanishing. They also linked DNA testing of items in that dumpster back to her and to her husband, Brian Walsh. And Texas Governor Greg Abbott, once again, dipping his little toe right in the pool when you talk about national politics and calling for the head of Homeland Security to be impeached. His remarks come as House Republicans are moving swiftly to build a case against Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas. There has only ever been one cabinet secretary impeached. We'll see how this goes. And talking mortgages now, because the Mortgage Bankers Association says application volume went up by nearly 28% last week. That's because the average 30-year rate fell to just above 6.2%. The drop in rates also led to more people seeking to refinance. And following this story in the San Diego area, the Cameron family YMCA in Santee will close early today ahead of dueling protests about a transgender person's use of the women's locker room. This again, right? The protests are in response to 17-year-old Rebecca Phillips, who spoke at a recent city council meeting. You can see her here, and to certain media outlets as well, that she saw a person who appeared to be a man in the women's locker room, and she feared for her safety. Now, the protests being put on by conservative and socialist groups. The YMCA has apologized for not providing the teen the support she deserves. They claim they have a long history of safeguarding children. And let's get to a view you might recognize. Look at the sea lions at Pier 39 in San Francisco. There they are. They will be the stars of an event celebrating their arrival at Pier 39 33 years ago. The harbor master says the sea lions will be treated to a nice mix of anchovies as the festivities kick off on Thursday at 11 a.m. The loud marine mammals started making K-Dock their home in 1990 due to the bay's abundant food sources. The sea lions remain a very popular attraction at Fisherman's Wharf. And lastly, a study by an Arizona State professor shows that a famous Monty Python sketch, it might actually provide an effective form of exercise. Exercise physiologist and longtime Monty Python fan, Dr. Glenn Gaser, says the silly walk uses more than twice the energy of a regular walking pace. He equates the silly walk with running more than 5 minutes. He says 15 minutes a day of the silly walk meets the guidelines for weekly vigorous activity. The Ministry of Silly Walk sketch features silly walks by cast members John Cleese and Michael Palin. Gaser says the walk by Cleese's character, Mr. Teabag, is the most effective exercise. His findings were actually published in the British Medical Journal. And this report is sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. For more than 30 years, Steve has put his tax knowledge to work for individuals and for businesses. If you need help with your taxes, go ahead, call Steve Moskowitz at 888-TAX-STEAL, or you can find him online at moskowitzllp.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson.
I've told you, it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yes, indeed. What up, everybody? It is our Wednesday show, middle of January already. The rain, one more little blast of it to move in tonight, particularly. But got a big, fun guest waiting. But before I get to him, I want to acknowledge so many of you who have been so supportive to the show. We're crowdfunded, So without you funding, we really can't continue. It's terrific that you have ridden to our side. You're really very much a part of our future and of our now. So thank you. K Major smashed it. Love you guys. Smashed it like a boss.
With your iron rod.
And I'm going to give you a big Dan Ashley shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you, K Major. Appreciate that. Kevin Hobbs, always supporting.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kevin. I don't really know how to properly acknowledge your...
Thank you so much.
I give you the British thank you so much, Kevin. Yes, indeed. Andreas, good luck, Mark. Like Nikki, I slept in the hospital last night with my 94-year-old mother. Please have all the crowd put a pray in for me. Yes, thanks. Andreas, first of all, you're a magnificent guy. You're so supportive of this show and of Nikki's show. You're clearly a guy with a huge heart, and we're all thinking of your mom, and we will carry her in our thoughts. And we love you, my friend. So, Andreas, thank you very much for that donation and for your constant support, which is really, it sustains us. So thank you. Yeah. Now, I want to bring on somebody who we've never had on the show before. So this is pretty cool.
The Mark Thompson Show.
He is a British journalist, opinion maker, a guy with a substantial, hot YouTube show right now. I'll have him talk about that in greater detail. He is also, among other things, a distinguished voiceover artist, Kim. You know, myself, a voiceover artist. I had to think long and hard before I wanted to bring on someone who is arguably more successful than myself. I don't...
Maybe the competition, what we call
Yeah,
them?
exactly. I don't want to... I mean, it's not a competition, but I'm just saying if it were a competition, I think he's winning.
Uh-oh.
You can imagine that doesn't make me feel very good. How about it for Anthony Davis, my friends? He is also the voice of WAZE now, the new voice of WAZE. Anthony
That's
Davis,
awesome.
things are hot for you right now, my friend. Welcome.
It's all luck. I don't know that talent plays a part, really, but it just kind of happened that way. So thank you, Mark. I appreciate that. And, I listened to you for so long on American Idol, and I always thought that I wanted that guy's voice. So, it goes both
isn't
ways,
that
my
nice?
friend.
He opens with a compliment. Very, very well done. I have to say, Anthony Davis. You know,
just let him keep talking for a minute.
I know
he's got
Mark, it's so nice to meet you. And I listened to you on American Idol, and I thought you do have a great delivery.
Yeah, you
my
really
friend.
do. Mm-hmm.
Hey, Anthony Davis, before I get to what you're doing now with your YouTube, the YouTube weekend show is smoking hot right now. Tell everybody quickly what it's called, and they can subscribe, and they will.
Sure. It's a kind of long-form interview show. You know, do you remember when we used to have dinner parties and we would go to other people's houses? Do you remember those days? And on occasion, you'd have a really good night. You know, somebody would bring up a subject and people would start volleying, and the most eloquent people at the table would kind of come down to those two. But you'd always leave feeling really satisfied and thinking, I didn't want to go to that dinner, but I'm so pleased I did because I learned so much or whatever. So I wanted to kind of encapsulate that notion in a YouTube kind of conversation. It's not really an interview show. It's more of a conversation show. But I try and find really smart people to listen to. I do a lot more listening than talking, you'll be pleased to know. And it's been such an education, just obviously because I've only lived in the US for 6 years, and so I'm only just kind of coming to terms with the insanity that is this beautiful country. But obviously, most of the people I have on are from the US, and they are explaining the kind of insanity of the modern political system and cultural system, and it's fascinating. So it's called The Weekend Show. It happens every Sunday night. Goes out on the Midas Media Network, and we have an increasingly large following. So a couple of weeks ago, I had David Fromm, who's one of the staff writers at The Atlantic, who is a wonderful speaker, and I just think it's definitely worth you checking it out. We had Peter Strzok on last week, who was one of the lovers, you may remember, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page,
the FBI,
who were part of the Russia investigation. Yeah,
you do a great job with it. I've watched a bunch of it, and congratulations on its great success. I want to ask you now. I'm going to double back to something you said, which is the 6 years you've spent here in this crazy place, because I do want your take on it. But I wanted to also mention, Kim, Anthony Davis is someone who is part of one of the, I would suggest, breakthrough commercials for Nike that's ever been produced.
Oh.
Okay, and he was a voice on it. And I want to show, if I can, and again, I'll get back to politics in a second. We're just getting to know you, so I like people to know some of the cool stuff you've done, right? And so this is one of those things. I would like to show the whole commercial because it's really a great commercial. And if you're listening on the podcast, I recommend that you actually go to the YouTube show and check this out, because part of, and I'd suggest maybe the essential part of this spot, is the video. And the way it changed. Wouldn't you agree with me, Anthony? The images and the imagery is powerful, right?
I think Nike, obviously, they have the budget to make the best ads. This commercial, they spent, I'm trying to remember, they looked at 9,000 hours of video footage to find footage that matched on the left-hand side of the screen and the right-hand side of the screen, with just a line in between. And that's the magic of this. It was the man-hours that went into creating this. And
Sure.
over and above that is the message, which is one of you can't stop sport and togetherness. And yeah, I mean, it was a privilege to play a little part in the middle of that.
Yeah,
Can I try to share it?
Yeah, we'll show it, and then you can, everybody listening and watching, you'll pick out where Anthony's in here. Here we go.
Can you hold on for just a second?
Yeah, of course. So we'll get it organized so that Kim can share it with everyone. Here it is. This is the Nike spot. It runs about 90 seconds, I think. So you got it, Kim? Can you blow it up bigger?
We're never alone. And that is our strength. Because when we're doubted, we'll play as one. When we're held back, we'll go farther and harder. If we're not taken seriously, we'll prove that wrong. And if we don't fit the sport, we'll change the sport. We know things won't always go our way.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
But whatever it is, we'll find a way. And when things aren't fair, we'll come together for change.
We have a responsibility
to make this world a better place.
And no matter how bad it gets, we will always come back stronger. Because nothing can stop what we can do together.
Yeah, there it is. You can't stop sport. Nike. It's a powerful spot. It almost makes me very emotional to watch it. That's the music, that's the imagery, that's the message. It all works so well, Anthony Davis.
And it won the Emmy for Best Commercial in 2022, and it also won the Grand Prix in Cannes for Best Commercial, which is kind of the dream for any commercial maker. That was the voice of Megan Rapinoe you heard doing the narration there.
I wondered who the female voice was. Yeah. Okay, yeah.
But
did you audition for that, Anthony Davis? Because I don't recall being given the copy to audition for it myself. Did you audition for it? Or?
This is what I was about to tell you, Mark. Is that I didn't know that I had auditioned for it. I every week I do a few auditions. I make them here in this little studio and send them off to my agent, and you never hear, the hit rate of getting booked, especially in California here, where you can throw a hammer out the window and probably land on a voiceover artist. So I get a phone call from my friend Ali, and she goes, I want to be your agent. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, you're the voice of the new Nike ad. I was like, what are you talking about? Of course I'm not. She's like, no, I'm going to be your agent. And I was like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I go online, I look it up, and I see this bit in the middle where, because of course this was as the pandemic was happening, and so my announcement was that all sporting events had been cancelled. Mm-hmm. And I thought, wow, they've ripped that off of one of my news broadcasts.
Wow.
They've literally stolen something and just used my voice.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
So you literally said that in a newscast or in another presentation of yours?
It turns out I did audition for it, but I had forgotten. I'd done it a few months ago, and they don't tell you that it's for Nike. They just say it's an audition, right?
Kim, he has so many auditions, he can't even remember that he auditioned for them.
And the world's sporting events are postponed or cancelled.
But Mark, here's the thing you're going to like the most, and that is they used the MP3 that I sent. They didn't even ask me to come back and do it again.
Wow.
They just used the audition. And that is a lesson to voiceover actors around the world. And that is make sure your audition tapes are high quality, because it means that they might just use your audition. And so that's what happened. And I called my agent on a Saturday and I said, they've used my voice. And he goes, yeah, I know. We've been negotiating and I was going to tell you on Monday. So
cool.
There we go. It all worked.
How great is that?
Yeah.
I love that story.
Can we go back to something you said about one of your news broadcasts? As a news person, you've piqued my interest. Are you a news guy as well?
Yeah, well, I started a daily newscast, which started as a podcast and has now kind of grown, called 5 Minute News. And I wanted to pick a duration that I could manage because having been a news guy and a talk show host in England for 20 years, and, I had an open line talk show on the radio.
Yeah.
I left there and I moved here. And a little bit like Mark, kind of coming off his show and there being an audience still reaching out saying, where can we hear you? Mm-hmm. I felt compelled to start making something. But I realized that there was no real kind of news as I knew news in the US. There was opinion news and there was infotainment and there was obviously cable news. Mm-hmm. And the traditional, like the legacy networks like CBS and NBC and CBS, I think I said CBS twice.
ABC.
ABC, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
They were not getting the audience anymore. They were hemorrhaging viewers. And so I was like, wow, there's an opportunity here. In a very full landscape that you would think that there was no room for new news.
Right.
There's actually a huge opportunity to do fact-based, non-partisan, truthful news that is not weighted politically. It's not even about being politically weighted. It's just about people trusting you that you are telling the truth, because I don't think anybody really knows who to trust these days.
It's true. Mm-hmm.
And so the legacy networks have got a bias based upon the fact that they've been on air for years. And as we know, channels like Fox and some of these right-wing networks, they've nailed their colors to the mast. They're not even pretending to be fair and balanced, despite their tagline. So, I created 5 Minute News, which is 3 stories every morning. It'll be in your podcast app the moment you wake up in the morning, because it drops in the very early hours. And you'll hear me telling you the 3 most important stories that are happening around the world. It's not the biggest stories. There's no celebrity stories. It's just what is most important. And
Excellent.
that means that other networks might not even mention them.
Yeah. All right. I'm checking it out. Thank you for that.
What's your take as someone who grew up overseas, and as you say, has been here 6 years? I want to get your take on what's happening here to our government, to our politics. And then I want to get your quick take on what's going on in the world and our proxy war in Ukraine. But I'm going to start here. And before I completely smear this country, which I think is very smearable, I really think we are losing our, we've lost our moorings, I think, in terms of, what's real and, what lies prevail. Sadly, that contagion has gotten to your country as well, right? I mean, there's a certain aspect of zaniness about what's going on in Britain, too, isn't there?
It is similar. It's not the same, and I can explain very simply why it's not the same. If we imagine a clock, and I'm going to explain it as well as demonstrate it visually, because I know you have podcast listeners. Okay. If we put our hand at the 12 o'clock position, your right wing in the media and in government is very much over to the kind of 5 o'clock position, and our right is kind of at the 1 o'clock or the 2 o'clock position, and so instantly you have a different level. So they would never ban abortion in the UK, for example. It just wouldn't. It's not even on anyone's lips. It's whether it's the Conservatives who have been in government now for about 12 years, that they've kind of maintained power, and consequently austerity. And we live under a thing called austerity in the United Kingdom, which is not a word that's really used here in the US. And the other thing I would say about the UK, just finally, is that we talk about the poor all the time. And notice I'm pronouncing both O's in the word poor. We talk about the poor, we acknowledge the poor, and we seek to help the poor. In America, all I ever hear politicians and the media talking about is the middle classes. But there's not really a mention of the poor. It's almost like pretending they don't exist. And I find that very interesting, because now I'm from a social democracy country, so we provide welfare for the poor. We provide free health care for everybody, including the poor, including the homeless, including you guys. If you wanted to visit England and you got into an accident, you could go into any hospital. They wouldn't even ask you for your credit card details. They'd just look after you and off you go. And that's very important to me. I grew up with that, and I recognize the importance of that. It's not as good as, obviously, private healthcare, because if you want to get a hip replacement, you're probably going to wait maybe a year and a half in England. But
they have that. That's also an option in England. You can have private health care instead if you want.
Absolutely. And it was also an option here. When Bernie Sanders talked about Medicare for all, he didn't say we're going to take away private health care. He said we want to provide a safety net for everybody else. And again, the media misconstrued that, and politicians on the right decided to weaponize that. And so people thought that they were going to lose their health care because Bernie Sanders wanted to give health care to everybody else. And they should have mentioned waiting 18 months for a hip replacement because, it's a very good example. So that's what I would say about the differences between the countries. America does not have a social safety net in the same way that England and many of the European countries do. And so when I moved here and I was like, wow, there is no acknowledgement of the homeless. I went on Nextdoor, the community site, and people talk about the homeless like they're vermin. And I just didn't get it. We're only really a paycheck away from homelessness. So many people in the US live paycheck to paycheck, and this making people work all hours and only giving people 2 weeks holiday. And, maternity leave in England, maternity leave is the whole duration of a year. You get 52 weeks maternity leave. Even men get paternity leave. So I just think that learning the difference between the two countries, and maybe this is a lesson to Americans, which is travel more, be inquisitive and realize by looking at other systems that maybe America isn't the greatest country in the world. I mean, it is when it comes to cheeseburgers, hands down.
We talk about that. We talk about that on this show quite a bit, the myth of American exceptionalism and how that is played out in so many different pieces of fact, of message that we grow up with. In other words, it's just woven into our education and into the texture of our culture. So, there's one thing to have national pride, but it's another thing to be delusional, which is, I believe, really what carries the day in this country. But I also think that there's so many spectacular things about this country.
Everything I love is from America.
Yeah,
Mark. Everything. All my favorite movies and plays and songs, they all, most of it is popular culture, I'll give you that. But it all comes from the United States. And that's why I wanted to move here, because I wanted to live this kind of, it's like, living in California is a bit like living in the movies, not just because I see Kevin Bacon when I go for a hike. I mean, obviously that plays a small part. But it does feel, I think it's the inclusivity, and it's the fact that, when the Oscars are on, they close Hollywood Boulevard and I have to detour. And I'm like, oh, the Oscars are on. I didn't get an invitation, but I know that they're on. So that for me is great fun. And I think the people here are amazing and kind of, I think California is it's a kind of isolated country, isn't it? It's coming on to be the fourth richest economy in the world, just California. And so it's not really an example of America or Middle America or the rest of America.
Well, it is and it's not. I would say to you, Anthony, don't you think that what you're describing is the world of Los Angeles, the world of San Francisco? These are islands of progressivism in some ways from a political standpoint, and a sort of a cultural aspect to both those cities that has a full breadth of experience and a full breadth of ethnicities and a full breadth of viewpoints that you won't find elsewhere in California. You don't have to leave.
That's right. I mean, even Orange County was, I would visit there, and it would be a kind of, you'd see Trump convoys, and people with like Nazi flags. I mean, seriously? So I totally get that. And I was just going to say, you drive from where you are to the Bay Area in the Central Valley and stop along the way, and you'll find the same thing. You'll find very different concerns in California. It's as though, that's why I always say California is virtually ungovernable. There are just so many different, special interests. But please, go ahead. And then the final thing I wanted to say in answer to your initial question, about the political landscape and the media, is a thing called positive bias. And that is what people really have failed to kind of explore intellectually. And that is that when I say I do a news program, and Kim, I think you'll kind of appreciate this, I have a desire to only report the facts based on multiple sources, based upon and very non-political. Like if something happens and it's bad, it has to be reported, right? The January 6th insurrection, obviously it's going to be reported. But right-wing media just won't mention it, or they'll pretend it's something else. You know, they'll just kind of move it down the pecking order. And so, you know, we have to kind of hold truth very, you know, it's part of being a journalist. And I don't think people realize that that is part of the craft of journalism, is putting your personal opinions to one side and just focusing on the story and getting to the truth. But what positive bias does is it's the viewer or the listener who has a political persuasion, who listens to it and goes, well, that's not true, is it? Because they're putting their bias onto my delivery or your delivery.
But that's what news really is about. You listen to it and make your own decisions, and instead of having someone tell you what to think, we give you the facts, and then you're able to take the facts and think what you want to think about it. Two different people listening to the same newscast could come away with wildly different opinions on what was just said. One of the things I worry about with news is being a reporter is if I'm using other people's reporting and, as you say, trying to give the story from all sides and multiple sources, what bias might be included in those reports that I'm not seeing and passing along. That's something I struggle with sometimes.
Yeah, but I don't think there is bias if you seek the truth. And I don't believe that. I kind of disagree with what you've said in a very respectful and British fashion. And that is
that's the best kind of disagreement.
Thank you. And that is that, it is not your job to appease everybody and to do kind of both sides the story. It is your job to report the story.
True.
It's not for you to worry about how people are going to digest it or what they're going to think of it, because you can't change people's minds. Anybody who's got a kind of extremist family member has spent this last Christmas trying to bring them back to reality and has failed.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think, all we can do is stand by the truth of the story and not have our own bias in the way. Right. And I think that positive bias, where people will seek out the news that satisfies their bias, their built-in bias, with multiple networks and social media and all of that stuff, that's why your Facebook feed will look very different to somebody else's. And trying to convince that person that their Facebook feed is biased is an impossibility, because that's their reality. And this stuff is kind of deep, and it's very hard to convince the average person that I mean, even my stepfather, who, infuriates me and voted for Brexit, and I'm trying to tell him, you vote Conservative because Facebook told you to. No. And I'm like, trust me. And he just won't have it. So we have to, agree to disagree.
We do cocoon ourselves, and we have these sort of news silos that, so we pick and choose now. So it just really reinforces, as you say, the bias that we already have. We have only another minute or so with Anthony Davis. So cool. I did want to touch on the WAZE thing. So you're the voice of WAZE now?
Well, this was for the World Cup. They wanted a UK commentator, because a lot of the sports commentators for these types of football events, or soccer events as you know them, are done by Brits. And it's so weird because I'm not a sports guy at all. Like I have no competitive spirit. I just have no interest in sport. In fact, I bought one of those blue LA hats. Is that a Lakers hat when I first moved here? Is that what it is? And I
just even know what it is.
I just thought it was an LA hat. I was like, I'm in LA. I'm going to wear a blue hat. And so I'm in the grocery store, and a guy goes, "So you enjoyed the game last night?" And I was like, sorry, what are you doing? The hat you're wearing. And I literally didn't know that I'd bought a sporty hat. Anyway, rewind. So again, I get an audition to do, navigation, sat nav, and they wanted it in the style of a British sports commentator, and I get a lot of that, weirdly, and so I just did it, and the next thing you know, they said, "Yeah, come and record 1 million different words."
Oh, that's great.
That's what
I did. So, like, what kind of stuff? Like turn left at the next intersection type thing, or what?
You do the basics, so you go at the end of the road, turn left, at the end of the road, turn right, all that stuff. But then, occasionally, you'll be like, as you arrive at your destination, you'll hear me go, "You have arrived. They think it's all over. It is now."
Oh, that's great. That's great. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. Yes, I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really cool. How much fun. Terrific. Well, Everything's going better for Anthony Davis than it is for me, Kim. I'm very put off. I'm looking for if I've done a voiceover that I could brag about. And this is the only thing I can find on the spur of the moment here. I'll just really quickly, I'd say.
This is your stomach.
Hello.
Your stomach is feeling lonely.
Yeah, I'm lonely.
To cheer up your stomach, we've invited a McDonald's quarter pounder with cheese and large fries over for the evening.
I'm pushing
Let's see
junk
what
food,
happens.
Anthony. That's what I'm doing.
Goodness, dare I say there's a party going on.
So,
Put your hands up in the
yes, lonely stomachs deserve McDonald's. Like the legendary quarter pounder with cheese, America's favorite fries, and the world famous Big Mac. You go, guy, at participating McDonald's.
yeah, so I'm pushing.
I'm giving you applause now.
I'm pushing food that will kill people, okay? While you're getting people to their destination and celebrating the world conquering COVID.
We've just got to do whatever we can do. You know, I think people forget. You know, we're just hired hands. You know that we have very little control in any of this, and we will literally like work for money. So, and I'm sure you'll agree, Mark. You know, I spend a lot of my time in this little box, and I'm much more comfortable here in this space than I would be at a party or, you know, in a kind of social environment, a kind of a normal environment. So as long as people want us to just stay home and make recordings, I'm very happy with that. I've been doing it since I was like a 6-year-old boy, like recording in my bedroom.
Well,
I'm 48 now, it's still going on.
You must come back and visit with us. We'd love for you to be a regular visitor. Charming, great that we had a conversation about a few things, and I'd love to talk about them more. I'm talking about world events. I didn't even get to Ukraine, so we'll do that for next time. But we look forward to your weekend show. Anthony Davis, find him on YouTube and look up the weekend show. Is there anything else? Please tell us now. This is your big moment for.
Well, you can just search 5 Minute News on any podcast app or even on YouTube. Just 5 Minute News, and then 5 Minute News produces the weekend show on Sundays.
Love it, love it. Anthony
You
Davis,
need a
so
co-anchor. Cool. I'm your girl.
There you go. Kim's available. Love it, Anthony Davis. Thank you. Yeah. Right on, right on, right on. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
How cool is he?
He's awesome. I will never hear the directions without seeing his face in my mind again. So that's one thing that, he's cute.
Welcome this guy, Steve Moskowitz. Hey, Steve, last hour. Cute. I know. He's pretty special. I have to say, Steve Moskowitz is the guy. I mentioned it last hour. We're talking about it in broad stroke terms that you want as your advocate as you deal with the U.S. government. And, in addition to getting you all the benefits that Steve's talked about, and they are out there.
Yeah.
But when it comes time, you were talking, Steve, about having perhaps not gotten to your taxes, maybe being this happens a lot. You're behind the 8 ball for any number of reasons. You put off paying your taxes, and then one thing leads to another, and you just put it off maybe for a couple of years. And you end up having to, I guess, negotiate is what you're talking about.
Or you
with the
marry
government.
somebody with a tax problem.
Or you what? Say it again.
Or you marry somebody with a tax problem.
There you go. Great example. So how does that negotiation go? Can you actually get the tax burden relieved? Or, in some way, can you negotiate down the tax bill? How does it work?
Absolutely. That's what an offering compromise is all about. So suppose I'm representing John Smith, and IRS wants $1 million from him. I say, well, that's going to be a problem. And then there's 3 bases for negotiating it down. The first one is the person doesn't have the income or assets, and that's the most common. This happens all the time. Somebody's a stockbroker one day and he's washing floors the next day. Or somebody's business goes bust. Or all kinds of things happen in business where you are heavily invested in crypto, and then you find out that the guy running your crypto exchange is off in the islands, and maybe you don't have what you thought you had. So the bottom line is the first thing you take a look at is somebody's income and assets. And here, it's different than everything else in tax, because everything else in tax is past January 1st to December 31st of some prior year. In this area of tax law, we're guessing about the future. There's all kinds of things that come up. If you're representing somebody 35, it's different than if you're representing somebody 95. Those are considerations. A healthy 35-year-old can be making money for a while. A 95-year-old, that's a different story. So the first thing you take a look at is the finances, and that's a big deal. Are there any special needs? You're healthy, but your spouse is ill, and there's some medicine that's not covered by insurance. It gets trickier when you start talking about the parents, because you don't have a legal obligation to support your parents. And I just had a case the other day, 87-year-old mother is sick. Now, the taxpayer doesn't have a legal duty to support the 87-year-old. But I said, well, what should we do? Should we throw mom in the street and let her die there? So these are things for negotiations. That's the first ground. I go on and on about that. The second ground is doubt as to liability, where you say, well, you know what? I don't think I really owe what the IRS agent said. For example, you get a letter that says you owe $1 zillion. Or somebody says, from your audit, you say, what audit? Things happen. So you say, well, no, I want to go ahead and talk about that audit. And then there's a hardship ground. And the hardship ground, and this is what they actually say, it would be unfair to collect the taxes. And that's where you get into the more compassionate area where, for example, I had a client who was dying. And he owed the taxes, and there's no doubt about it. And he says, look, just let me stay in my house for the rest of my life, which unfortunately in this taxpayer's case wasn't too long. And then, you can take my stuff. So there's all.
Do you then produce evidence to the IRS saying, look, this is the condition of my client, and that,
it depends on what the agent asks for. Again, you're dealing with individuals. So if you're dealing with John Smith, he might a lot of things that Mary Jones doesn't, or vice versa. It's the individual agent. That's why it varies so much. And this comes up all the time when I represent siblings that run a business together. Their tax cases are identical. But what we have to do with the agents is so different. They always ask me, why is my case so different than my siblings? And the answer is different agent. The agents have a lot of discretion, just like a street cop can pull you over and say, you went through the stop sign. And you say, officer, I'm terribly sorry. I just had a big fight with your spouse. And the cop says, well, all right, I understand. When he has a fight with his spouse, he gets upset too. He says, okay, you can go now. You tell the same situation to another cop, and that cop says, so you confess to distracted driving. Now I'm going to give you 2 tickets. One for the stop sign I saw you go through, and a second one for the distracted driving that you just confessed to. That's the art of negotiation. It's not a science, it's an art.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think
Mark couldn't take anymore.
Mark was like, okay, I'm calling Steve right now. I've got to have help. I just got a traffic ticket. No, that's interesting though. And I thought it was interesting you're talking about very similar finances, yet completely different taxes based on who's doing them. And
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
When we talk about IRS, we think about a giant bureaucracy. That doesn't exist. You're dealing with human beings. Human beings are different from each other. You're not dealing with the IRS. You're dealing with John Smith or Mary Jones representing that. You're dealing with human beings that have different requirements and different feelings about things, just like a police officer or anything else.
Tax attorney Steve Moskowitz, we absolutely adore you and thank you so much. And every time you're on, I always learn something new and lovely. I want to throw your banner up here because I
learned that my internet went off for a second, Steve. Sorry about that.
I thought you didn't want to hear anymore.
Yeah, that's it. You were done. Check it out.
What?
Yes.
But you can see the number at the bottom of the screen. It is 888 tax deal. And you can also find Steve online. Great website, MoskowitzLLP.com. So Steve, thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
The Mark Thompson Show.
That was just scary on my end. You know what I mean?
I figured you were freaking out.
Yeah,
like,
I was doing the freak. I mean, it was nasty.
We'll do it live. I'll write it and we'll do it live.
It was definitely a moment of panic. And so, hey, I'll tell you the truth. I'd like to do a little news with you.
Oh, okay.
I know the great thing about this format is that we don't have to hit top of the hour, bottom of the hour. We still
there is no clock. Yeah.
Yeah, we use that basic construct, which we took from the old radio station.
I have to tell you, when our guest was on, I was doing news when he was in the waiting room, and if I had known he was a news guy, I think I would have tried a little harder.
Oh. Well, he'll be back. He's
kidding.
really great. So
yeah, he's good.
Yeah, he's pretty terrific. So he'll be back, and he does have that great voice.
Yeah, he's
my
good.
God, he's got a great manner about him too. So really kind of special. Anthony Davis, find him, the 5-minute newscast and everything else. Well, I want to take a quick break for Kim's news. I'll be riding shotgun with her on that, so we'll have a chance to, to exchange some thoughts about what's going on in the world.
Kim, how are you?
And then when we come back, we'll do some acknowledgments. I'll address some things, a couple of other stories I want to touch on before the end of the show today. Might even have a major announcement. I don't know.
Oh.
But yeah, smash the like button like a boss. Give me a thumbs up. And the other thing I would tell you is to hit the notification bell. If you haven't hit the notification bell on YouTube, do it. And the reason I tell you that is not just because it'll tell you when our live show is on, but we're going to begin with dropping other videos occasionally. Some of them will be kind of important. Maybe it's important news about the show. Maybe it's important news events that we're commenting on, or even breaking news in some situations. So I want you to be aware of that, and you'll become aware of it if you hit the notification bell. And anytime we do anything, any kind of video, new video, whenever it breaks, you'll get a notification. So again, that's the other thing that you should rock too. All right, Kim's news, and we wrap up around here after that. Mark Thompson Show.
Do it.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. This report sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz. We'll get right to the news because President Biden the National Archives says it must consult with the Justice Department before releasing information on President Biden's handling of classified documents to Congress. House Republicans on the Oversight Committee requested all documents and communications between the archives and the White House related to the discovery of classified materials at Biden's home and former office. The archive says it will share the information after consulting with the DOJ to ensure that it doesn't interfere with the special counsel.
How would you handle this?
Yeah,
we could try ignoring it, sir.
You can try ignoring it.
I mean, you could see this coming a mile away that the House Republicans would be into it, right?
They are going to make political hay of this. Yeah, you're right.
And this is their new hoax.
Okay.
And I mean,
Anyway,
I guess you could argue that they should, because, look at all the hay made of the documents found at Mar-a-Lago and in storage units and at, wherever else.
Well, I would say this. They should, when we say they, I do believe that there should be a reckoning. There should be an accounting. And we are apparently, and we made this point the other day, way too loose about the ability to take these documents out of secure settings and keeping track of where they are. That said, the Mar-a-Lago situation and the Trump document heist, essentially what it is, you got 11,000 documents.
Yeah.
That is a way, and more to the point, there was a cover-up about it. There was a saying we've given all the documents back when they hadn't, resisting the subpoena. That's the reason the FBI had to go down there. It's been the opposite with Biden, but that is not to take away from the fact that I think it was wrong what Biden did. And that there, as I just said at the beginning, there should be a reckoning and a recognition of that. But to put the two, I get it, under the same general umbrella they might exist, but there are important distinguishing characteristics about each.
Americans are drowning in debt. A new study from NerdWallet finds the average household currently owes more than $165,000. The study also found nearly 7 in 10 Americans have financial concerns about the next 12 months. Here's your favorite character. This is George Santos. Look at that guy. He is being accused of fraud once again. Look at that. This time, a disabled veteran says Santos raised $3,000 for his sick dog and then disappeared with the money in 2016. What? In a
There's
text
never been anything like this.
Yes, I recall somebody else doing that same thing.
In a text to the news outlet Semaphore, Santos said he's got no clue who this guy is, while adding that the report was fake. So I don't know.
Wow, there's a lot of
this real
fakery
or
going
is
on.
this fake?
I think the
know.
big story with George Santos, just because you've mentioned him, and I'm glad you did, is that there was plenty of information about what a fraud this guy was. Maybe not all the full laundry list about his frauds, but there was plenty of information. And in fact, the local paper in his district spoke as to some of the fraud, particularly the financial fraud that was and is George Santos. And that editorial staff for that local paper recommended against voting for him. And they pointed out that he was an election denier, okay? He was one of those who was proclaiming Donald Trump's the greatest thing since Abraham Lincoln. He literally said those words. I'm not just grabbing that out of the air. Greatest president since Abraham Lincoln, et cetera. And he was a big Trumpy. And let's face it, in the end, it became something of party politics that brought George Santos to victory. People looked the other way on the fraud that was this guy. Now, us all finding out about George Santos and the laundry list of fraud, that was something that didn't happen until after the election. But in his district, there was information, plenty of it, and it was in the local paper, as I say, as to the fact that this guy was a complete fraud. So,
Yeah, I think the viewers and listeners agree with you there. There is a new designation for cancer associated with the World Trade Center and 9/11. Uterine cancer is now officially a 9/11 related illness. It is being added to the list after a years-long push to include it on the list of World Trade Center related diseases. The CDC says it's the most common gynecological cancer, with about 60,000 new cases a year and more than 11,000 deaths as well. Former President Trump is looking to return to Facebook. That's right. He wants back. NBC News reports Trump's campaign sent a letter to Meta Tuesday petitioning the company to unblock his account. The campaign arguing the ban on Trump's account has dramatically distorted and inhibited the public discourse. Meta telling NBC News it will announce a decision in the coming weeks. A source also telling NBC Trump's campaign advisors have workshopped ideas for his first tweet since having his Twitter account reinstated. Trump's social media moves come as he begins to mount his third bid for the White House.
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
Do we want this guy back on Twitter and Facebook? I mean, life is kind of good without him there, I have to tell you.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
I think that as these social platforms change, I mean, no wonder he wants back on Facebook. But he's got a lot of other people to carry his water on these social platforms as well. And the media loves him. They still love him. When I say love him, they love him for the clicks. They don't maybe love him personally. But it's the answer, of course, is do we want him? No, I mean, we don't. I mean,
there's never been anything like this.
Exactly. So
no, we really don't. The Department of Justice says it has disrupted a China-based cryptocurrency exchange notorious for dark net money laundering. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco announcing the founder of crypto exchange Bizlotto was arrested in Miami last night on money laundering charges. He is a Russian national who resides in China. So that happened. Yeah. And here's this story. Of course, the beach in San Francisco had a bunker slide all the way down the hill and land on the sand. The beach below Fort Funston is still open, though, after this World War II bunker fell onto it during the recent storms.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, I know. Thank God no one was underneath it when it hit.
What the hell is going on in the United States of America?
Yeah, even Ron's wondering about it.
They say the ground is so saturated from nonstop rains that the old concrete bunker loosened and slid right down the bluff, broke apart, and landed on the sand. No reports of injuries there, but officials are urging visitors follow trailhead signs, be extra cautious of surroundings, especially right now with all the loose soil. And lastly, I will show you this picture because they want it back. And
what is this? Is some kind of angelic scene?
this is. A city in northern France is asking Madonna to lend it a 19th century painting lost during the First World War. The mayor of Amiens thinks that the singer bought Diana and Endymion, this painting called Diana and Endymion, from artist Jerome Martin Langlois. It depicts Roman goddess Diana looking at Endymion, and it was originally displayed at an Amiens museum, but was lost after the city was bombed by Germany in 1918. They think Madonna bought it, and they want her to lend it back so they can put it back in that museum for people to see.
They think the singer Madonna bought it?
Yeah.
Wow.
Is there another Madonna that you know?
No, I don't know. I mean, it's just odd. I didn't realize.
I mean, come on.
Oh, you're right. You're right. As opposed to the other Madonna, exactly.
Yeah,
yeah.
But are you talking about anybody else? Yes, Madonna. And we don't know for sure that she has Diana and Endymion, but Amiens says we think she does, and we want it. So this report, sponsored by tax attorney Steve Moskowitz for more than 30 years. Steve has put his tax knowledge to work for individuals and businesses alike. If you need help with your taxes, you can give Steve a call. It's 888-TAX-STEAL. It's also MoskowitzLLP.com. I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Who's Mark Thompson? 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 Who's Mark Thompson?
Jeez, I get the idea.
Who's Mark Thompson?
I mean, enough with it. All right, I get it. My God, please. How about a little bit of respect? How about Trevor Maxon for $19.99? Trevor, Big Dan Ashley shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah, thank you, Trevor. Super sticker from Trevor. Joanne Dichter for $19.99. Big Dan Ashley shout out.
Big shout out.
Yeah. Absolutely love Doreen Sr. $2. Come on.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Doreen. Jeff, $5. Thank you so much.
Big shout out.
No, and thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have one more I just saw.
Wow. Jackie Walker with a super chat. Thanks for the Ron Owens drop, Mark. I always love hearing his voice. Thanks for your amazing show, too. Means the world to me. Oh, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jackie. I appreciate that. Ron is a dear friend, as you know, and I've tried to get him on the show. And the only reason Ron's not on the show, just to speak openly, is because he feels as though he doesn't, and he's wrong about this, but he feels as though he doesn't sound like the old Ron, you know what I mean? And he does. He sounds great, and I love him. And he can talk football, and he can talk, all things. But I can't force him, and I want to respect his wishes and Janny's wishes not to have him on right now. So I miss him. I miss seeing him, and I miss talking to him, and he's just the greatest. So glad that you appreciate that too, Jackie Walker. Yeah, Ron Owens. I have one story for you on the way out that just jumped out at me.
Okay,
so,
bring it on.
Yeah, can I do it? Here we go.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It's harder and harder to get recruits into the Army. And the shortage of potential soldiers has led to the Army changing its restrictions and changing its strategies towards restrictions on weight.
Oh.
People are too heavy who are coming into the Army. And so because the Army is desperately trying to get recruits, they enlisted only 75% of the number of soldiers that they'd aimed for. Just 23% of the 17 to 24-year-olds are eligible to serve, a fraction of those who want to. The share of Americans who meet the academic and fitness criteria is dwindling. And as a result, life's getting tough in the Army. And so they are actually offering different programs to get people into the Army after what will be a kind of existing workout that they'll do. There'll be essentially a boot camp before boot camp to get everybody into the shape that they need to be in. They realize, Army officials, that they're going to miss their year-end recruiting targets by a lot. And so they came up with a two-pronged scheme to help previously ineligible recruits lose weight or get up to speed on reading and math. To join the Army, a 5'10", 20-year-old male has to weigh under 180 pounds. So the fitness track of the new program allows recruits to be up to 6% above the weight threshold. And then they can continue basic training and then take off those pounds in basic training.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it didn't really matter because they're going to whip you into shape. Like once you get in, you're going through basic training. They're going to work you until you're, what they want you to be.
Yeah, but basic training is not the biggest loser. In other words, it's not trying to just lose weight. It's not a program designed originally anyway for weight loss. It's trying to get you into shape mentally and physically.
Sure.
I mean, there are endurance tests and all the rest, but if people show up in situations and with too many weight complications or too many physical complications, they just aren't even eligible for boot camp, might be the way to put it.
Yeah.
So they look, we've faced this challenge of youth obesity for years in this country. It is not a new thing, and we're facing it now. There's the inundation of all this junk food and just honestly, between soft drinks and or sodas, whichever part of your country you come from, you say it differently, and the different foods that we like. I mean, pizza, fried chicken, all this stuff. It's tough. It's tough to maintain without any kind of real physical exercise to take that off. Those pounds are going to they're just going to stick to you. So, but to see the Army challenged already in the way of recruits, same thing is happening in law enforcement. They're having to waive a lot of their initial restrictions and a lot of the initial requirements now to sort of allow people who wouldn't normally necessarily be qualified for the armed forces into the armed forces, and then they'll get them in shape after the fact. So, kind of wild. They want to reduce the dropout rate. That is true, too. Yeah. What did John Candy say in Stripes? Ron says, "You guys have a good workout program here. That's great for me." Yeah, the first half of Stripes was really funny. God, that's so true. I felt like that was almost two movies,
My husband said when he was in basic training, he was in the Marines, and he said he didn't go into the military overweight, but boy, did he drop all kinds of weight in basic training. He got out of there. He said he was like skin and bones.
Wow. Well, I know they do. Look, that's a program that would get anybody in shape.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a pretty brutal routine. No question about it. Yeah. Tomorrow, I have a notable loss, and the name may not mean a lot to you, but who this guy is pretty incredible. So I'll tell you about that tomorrow. You have Nikki's show today?
I do have Nikki's show today. Chip Franklin is coming on.
Oh, great. I sent him a text earlier today. Would you? I want to know. The reason I was what is he doing with his show? Is he going to continue with it or not?
I don't know. We'll ask him when we see him on the show today.
Oh, I love that. I love that. All right.
That's a Nikki level tease right there. And Nikki is probably going to join us from the hospital. We'll check in with her as well.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're thinking of her, and we're thinking of that's true. A mandating national service would be a good thing to do. I think. Not necessarily military service, but some kind of national service should be absolutely imposed in this country. I wanted to tell you to watch Nikki's show or to tune in to Pat. Pat I spoke to also. I'll share that conversation with you tomorrow. We have a major announcement tomorrow as well.
Oh.
And yeah, good things. Also tomorrow, David Katz joins us. We'll talk about all things legal. And there are pretty big things legal, especially concerning Donald Trump, all of you who are still on the Trump train. So we'll get to all of that tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Thank you for all the support. Andreas, we're thinking of you and your mom.
Out of time. Bye-bye.
And everybody, thank you for being with us today. Till tomorrow. Bye-bye.
Was that me? Am I supposed to do that? I got you.
You're supposed to run the close, Tim.
I hear what you're saying.
Kim, please.
Oh, okay. Wait, hold on.
Hang on a second. Let's do it again. Hang on. This is great. I thought this was made clear at the meeting. So tomorrow, David Katz joins us. It's going to be quite... Thank you all.
I'm Shadow Stevens for the Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We're thinking of all of you. Andreas.
All the time. Bye-bye.